Equalizer. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring the most iconic action stories to life. Today we are diving into a true movie story, The Equalizer. The Equalizer is a 2014 American vigilante action thriller film directed by Antoine Fuqua and written by Richard Wyke. It is based on the 1980s TV series of the same title and the first of 3 films starring Denzel Washington. The cast includes Marton, Csokas, Chloë Grace Moretz, David Harbour, Bill Pullman, and Melissa Leo. Washington plays Robert McCall, a retired Marine and former DIA officer, who reluctantly returns to action to protect a teenage trafficking victim from the members of the Russian mafia. Principal photography took place in Massachusetts from May 2013 to September 2013. The world premiere for The Equalizer was held at 2014 Toronto International Film Festival on September 7, 2014, and it was released worldwide on September 26, 2014. The film received mixed reviews from critics and grossed $192.3 million worldwide. The sequels, The Equalizer 2 and The Equalizer 3, were released on July 20, 2018, and September 1, 2023, respectively. Robert McCall, a former Marine and retired DIA/DCS officer, lives in Boston and works at a big-box home improvement store. He helps his colleague Ralphie train to become a security guard. Unable to sleep, Robert often spends late nights reading at an all-night diner, where he befriends Terry, a teenage sex worker trafficked by the Russian mafia. One evening, Terry shares that her real name is Alina and that she dreams of becoming a singer. Robert and Alina take a stroll, but Alina's pimp Slavy abruptly arrives, hits her and forces her into a car. Slavy hands Robert a business card for their escort service before driving away. A few nights later, a badly injured Alina is admitted to the ICU at a nearby hospital. Upon hearing the news, Robert learns from her friend Mandy that Slavy is responsible for her condition. Finding Slavy and his men at their restaurant, he is bluntly refused when he offers to buy Alina's freedom, so he swiftly kills them all. Unbeknownst to Robert, Slavy and his men are part of a much larger crime syndicate led by Russian oligarch Vladimir Pushkin. Teddy Renson, Pushkin's enforcer, arrives in Boston to investigate the attack. Aided by Boston police detectives on Pushkin's payroll, Teddy canvasses rival gangs in the area, beating Irish mob lieutenant Little John Looney almost to death to send a message. Robert continues exacting vigilante justice on the criminals he encounters. He blackmails 2 corrupt cops into returning racketeering money to Ralphie's mother and beats a gunman with a hammer after he robbed the hardware store, taking a coworker's heirloom ring from her. Teddy kills Mandy after learning that she has concealed information about Robert. He visits Robert at his apartment, where both try to intimidate each other. Teddy and his goons later try to kidnap Robert, who eludes them. Robert's former DIA colleague, Susan Plummer, identifies Teddy as Nikolai Ichenko, formerly of USSR Secret Police, with Spetsnaz background. He has murdered 2 of the Boston police detectives who failed to kidnap Robert. A third, named Frank Masters, had not been heard from for days. Susan also briefs Robert on Pushkin's operation. Robert tracks Masters down and threatens him into helping take down one of Pushkin's money laundering warehouses. Masters and Pushkin's men are taken into custody when the police arrive and find a note left by Robert to follow the money. He confronts Nikolai again, threatening to commit more damage if he continues to pursue him. Robert destroys 2 of Pushkin's oil tankers. Nikolai abducts Robert's co-workers at the hardware store to force him for a meeting. To Nikolai's surprise, Robert skips the meeting and kills the men to ensure the safety of the hostages they were guarding. Nikolai arrives with his men, but Robert stealthily kills them with improvised weapons collected throughout the hardware store and later kills Nikolai with a rivet gun to save a cornered Ralphie. 3 days later, Robert finds Pushkin at his Moscow mansion, kills the guards and tricks him into electrocuting himself. Alina, following her recovery, runs into Robert and shares that she has started a new life with the money that was left at her hospital bed by him. Inspired to continue helping others, Robert responds to online ads requesting help, calling himself the Equalizer. Cast: Denzel Washington as Robert McCall, Marton Csokas as Teddy/Nicola, Chloë Grace Moretz as Terry/Alina, David Harbour as Frank Masters, Haley Bennett as Mandy, Bill Pullman as Brian Plummer, Melissa Leo as Susan Plummer, David Meunier as Slavi, Johnny Squartus as Ralphie, Alex Lenov as Tavi, Vladimir Kulich as Vladimir Pushkin, Roger Mitchell as the lead investigator. In addition, Alan Maldonado plays Robert's co-worker Marcus, Robert Wahlberg and Timothy John Smith play the crooked Boston Police Department detectives, and Johnny Messner plays one of Teddy's henchmen. In April 2005, it was announced producer Mace Neufeld had partnered with Michael Sloan, co-creator of The Equalizer, and producer Tony Aldrich, to come up with the idea for adapting the series to film while working on another project, 7. In December of that year, the Weinstein Company had acquired the rights to develop the film, 8. In June 2007, it was reported that Michael Connelly and Terrell Lee Langford were hired to pen the screenplay with Paul McGuigan slated to direct, 9. In June 2010, it was announced that Russell Crowe was trying to bring The Equalizer to the big screen, directed by Paul Haggis, with Crowe intending to play Robert McCall, 10. 11. In December 2011, it was reported that Denzel Washington would star in the title role of the film version, to be financed by Sony Pictures Entertainment and Escape Artists, 10. 12. In 2012, Nicholas Winding Refn entered talks to direct the remake, but the deal with Sony fell through for unknown reasons. 13. Director Antoine Fuqua came on board to direct on March 21, 2013, reuniting him with Washington after their successful collaboration on the 2001 Oscar-winning film Training Day. 14. Chloë Grace Moretz was announced as a co-star on May 10, 2013. Anna Kendrick, Kelly MacDonald, and Nina Dobrev were also considered. 15. On May 31, 2013, Melissa Leo was cast in the film. Leo previously worked with Washington in the 2012 film Flight, and with Fuqua in Olympus Has Fallen, 2013. 16. Coincidentally, Leo actually guest-starred in a Season 1 episode of the original Equalizer television series titled The Defector, in which she portrayed the daughter of a former Soviet agent who enlists McCall's help to defect to the United States. Marton Csokas was cast to play the villain on May 17. Filming. Principal photography began in May 2013 at various locations throughout Boston, including Haverhill, Hamilton, Ipswich, and Swampscott. 18. Filming wrapped in September 2013. 18. In the scene where McCall attempts to suffocate Masters in his car, it is a Series 3 Jaguar XJ6 revealed in the shot of the hose into the tailpipe. The Jaguar was famously used in the original television series. On June 21, 2013, Harry Gregson Williams was hired to compose the music for the film. 19. Faraz Sarabande released a soundtrack album for The Equalizer on September 23, 2014. 20. The song, Guts Over Fear, by rapper Eminem featuring Sia, with production by Emil Haney, premiered in trailers for the film. 21. The song also plays over the closing credits. Harry Gregson Williams' score received critical acclaim for its ability to heighten the tension and atmosphere of the film. 22. The album peaked at number 26 on the Billboard 200 chart, showcasing the popularity of the music beyond the movie itself. Guts Over Fear became a significant component of the film's marketing campaign, garnering widespread attention and further solidifying The Equalizer's impact on popular culture. 22. Denzel Washington and Chloë Grace Moretz promoting the film at the 2014 Toronto International Film Festival. Promotion and marketing. The first official image from the film was released on December 6, 2013. On August 6, 2012, Sony had originally planned on an April 11, 2014 release date, but on July 5, 2013, the release date pushed back to September 26, 2014. 23, 24. The first official poster for the film was released on April 16, 2014. 25. On April 22, USA Today revealed photos from the film. 26. On May 24, the trailer for the film was released. 27. On June 12, another official trailer for the film was released. On July 16, the IMAX poster for the film was released. 29. Innovative marketing tactics were employed for the film's promotion, including placing a viral ad in the New York Times Sunday Classifieds, generating buzz and intrigue among potential viewers. 30. Denzel Washington's command and presence in the lead role was a key factor in drawing audiences, with his portrayal serving as a major selling point in promotional materials. 31. Social media campaigns and targeted advertising further bolstered anticipation for the film's release, engaging with audiences across various platforms. 31. The release date shift from April to September allowed for a more strategic positioning, capitalizing on a less competitive market window and ultimately contributing to the film's box office success. 31. Theatrical release. The film's premiere was held at the 2014 Toronto International Film Festival on September 7, 2014. 32. Sony released the film in theaters worldwide on September 26, 2014. 33. At the Toronto International Film Festival premiere, Denzel Washington and Chloë Grace Moretz captivated audiences with their dynamic performances, generating early excitement and positive reviews. 34. Following its festival debut, The Equalizer received widespread acclaim, solidifying anticipation for its global theatrical release on September 26, 2014. 31. The Equalizer was released on Blu-ray and DVD on December 9, 2014, by Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. 35. Later, it was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray on July 10, 2018, 10 days before the sequel was released in theaters. 36. The Equalizer grossed $101.5 million in North America and $90.8 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $192.3 million. Its net production budget was estimated between $55 million and $73 million. 4. The film was released on September 26, 2014, in the United States and earned $12.5 million from 3,236 theaters in its first opening night, including the $1.45 million it earned from 2,693 screens from Thursday night showings. On the second day, the film earned $13.5 million and $8.1 million on the third day. 37. 38. Its opening day is the third biggest for Washington, trailing behind American Gangster, $15.8 million, and Safe House, $13.6 million. 39. On its opening weekend, the film earned $34.1 million, $10,816 per theater, and debuted at number 1 at the box office. The film broke several records at the box office during its opening weekend, including the biggest R-rated debut of September, surpassing Jackass No. 2 record, $29 million, the biggest IMAX opener of September, the biggest debut weekend gross for Antoine surpassing Olympus Has Fallen, $30 million. The fifth biggest domestic opening for Washington behind the aforementioned American Gangster, $43.6 million, Safe House, $40.2 million, and eventually behind its sequel The Equalizer 2, $35.80 million, and The Magnificent Seven, $35.7 million. It was also the fourth biggest for a film released in September, 40, 41, 42. It earned $3.3 million from 352 IMAX theaters. 43. Audiences for the debut weekend of the film were 52% male and 48% female, with 65% of ticket buyers over 30 years old. 44. The Equalizer earned $17.8 million overseas from 65 territories from 4,500 screens during its opening weekend, with $1.4 million of the gross coming from 137 IMAX theaters. 45. The film broke several September openings records in various territories, including the UK, Netherlands, Israel, and Egypt. 46. Top openings include the UK, $2.9 million, Russia, $2.7 million, Mexico, $1.4 million, Brazil, $1.3 million, United Arab Emirates, $875,000, and Malaysia, $650,000. Showings from Village Roadshow markets grossed an estimate $2.4 million, with top openings including Australia, $1.9 million, New Zealand, $180,000, and Singapore, $300,000. 47, 48. Critical response. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, The Equalizer has an approval rating of 61% based on 205 reviews, with an average rating of 5.7/10. 49. The site's critical consensus reads, The Equalizer is more stylishly violent than meaningful, but with Antoine Fuqua behind the cameras and Denzel Washington dispensing justice, it delivers. 49. At Metacritic, which assigns a weighted average rating, the film received an average score of 57 out of 100, based on 41 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. 50. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A- on a scale ranging from A+ to F. 51. Writing for RogerEbert.com, Susan Lasazina gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, stating, If The Equalizer lacks gravitas, it is fairly sturdy as far as pure entertainment goes. And this film acts as an origin story with an ending that suggests a new franchise is afoot. 52. Common Sense Media gave an expert review of 3-star rating, with parents and kids giving an average of 4 stars. 53. James Berardinelli of Real Views gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, positively commenting on the pacing, further describing that it is in no hurry to rush into things. 54. For the Globe and Mail, Liam Lacey gave it 2.5 stars out of 4, welcoming the idea of sequels to The Equalizer, just to watch Denzel finding new ways of getting even. 55. Jeffrey McNabb for The Independent favorably compared the film to Washington's films with the late Tony Scott. However, McNabb criticized the plot, claiming that it makes no sense whatsoever. Nonetheless, he left a rating of 3 stars out of 5. 56. Sequels. The Equalizer 2. Main article, The Equalizer 2. On February 24, 2014, 7 months before the release of the film, it was announced that Sony Pictures and Escape Artists were planning a sequel, with Richard Wenk penning the script. 57. 58, 59. In early October 2014, Fuqua said in an interview that there would be a sequel to the film only if audiences and Denzel Washington wanted it. He stated McCall was an interesting character and that the sequel could have more of an international flavor. 60. On April 22, 2015, Sony announced that a sequel would be made. 61. In July 2017, Columbia Pictures announced that a portion of the filming would take place in the Brant Rock area of Marshfield, which took place over 2 weeks in November 2017. 62. The Equalizer 2 was released in the U.S. on July 20, 2018. The Equalizer 3. Main article, The Equalizer 3. In August 2018, Fuqua announced his plans to continue the film series. The filmmaker expressed interest in the plot taking place in an international setting. 63. By January 2022, a third film was officially confirmed to be in development, with Denzel Washington and Fuqua returning. Principal photography was scheduled to commence in 2022. 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. In June 2022, Dakota Fanning was cast in a supporting role. Written by Richard Wenk, the movie was produced by Todd Black, Jason Blumenthal, Steve Tisch, and Denzel Washington. The project is a co-production between Sony Pictures and Escape Artists Productions. 70. The film was released theatrically on September 1, 2023. In 2000, the Steve Tisch Company merged with Todd Black and Jason Blumenthal's Black and Blue to form Escape Artists. It was originally a film financing company with a deal with Columbia Pictures and other international backers. 1. The first produced movie under the Escape Artists banner was A Knight's Tale, starring Heath Ledger in May 2001. In the fall of 2005, Escape Artists released The Weatherman, directed by Gore Verbinski and starring Nicolas Cage and Michael Caine. Their next film, The Pursuit of Happiness, directed by Gabrielle Maxino and starring Will Smith, was released in December 2006 and earned over $300 million in worldwide ticket sales, as well as Best Actor Academy Award and Golden Globe nominations for Will Smith. 7 Pounds, another Gabrielle Maxino-directed film starring Will Smith, was released in December 2008. In 2009, Escape Artists released the Alex Proyas thriller Knowing, starring Nicolas Cage, and The Taking of Pelham 123, directed by Tony Scott and starring Denzel Washington and John Travolta. Escape Artists produced The Upside, which was directed by Neil Berger and starring Kevin Hart. It was released through STX Entertainment and Lantern Entertainment on January 11, 2019 in the United States. Escape Artists produced all 3 film adaptations of The Equalizer, with the most recent being the 2023 film The Equalizer 3. All 3 movies starred Denzel Washington in the main role of Robert McCall. In February 2013, 12-year veteran David Bloomfield was promoted to partner Escape Artists. 2. In October 2014, the company inks its first look pact with FX Productions. 3. In August 2019, MGM Television signed its first look deal with Escape Artists. Antoine Fuqua /NTWN Fockel /Anti1 FEWKW, born May 30, 1965, 1, 2, is an American director and producer of film, television, and music videos. Known for his work in the action and thriller genres, he was originally known as a director of music videos, and made his film debut in 1998 with The Replacement Killers. His critical breakthrough was the 2001 crime thriller Training Day, winning the Black Reel Award for Outstanding Director. His subsequent films include Tears of the Sun, 2003, King Arthur, 2004, Shooter, 2007, Brooklyn's Finest, 2009, Olympus Has Fallen, 2013, Southpaw, 2015, The Magnificent Seven, 2016, and the Equalizer trilogy, 2014 to 2023, earning with the first one the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Directing in a Motion Picture. He also directed the critically acclaimed documentaries American Dream/American Nightmare, 2018, What's My Name, Muhammad Ali, 2019, and the 2022 Hulu documentary series Legacy, the true story of the LA Lakers, for which she won the Sports Emmy Awards for Outstanding Documentary Series. 3. Early life. Fuqua was born in Pittsburgh to Carlos and Mary Fuqua. He graduated from Taylor Alderdice High School in 1983, before turning to filmmaking and music videos. Fuqua studied electrical engineering, with the hope of going on to fly jets in the military. 5. Fuqua pays tribute to screenwriter Shinobu Hashimoto, a frequent collaborator of Akira Kurosawa's, saying his writing affected a boy from Pittsburgh living in the ghetto. Shinobu Hashimoto's writing was so beautiful and poetic and powerful and heartbreaking. It was all about justice, it was all about sacrifice, and it made me want to be one of those guys. I came from a rough area, and I had my own version of watching poor people getting pushed down. Whoever the person was who had the power, they would come in and take from other people. 6. Fuqua later said that his experience of violence shaped his adolescence, and played a role in his eventual choice of career. My first big break was when I got shot when I was 15. It changed my life and it made me not hang out in the streets as much, and go to the movies more. Those sort of things are wake-up calls to have a better appreciation for life, and a better appreciation for the people around you. From that moment in my life I put all my energy into what I believed in, and at that time it was playing basketball and sports. That led me to a scholarship. After that a professor said that I should take an art class. I fell in love with an artist by the name of Caravaggio. 7. Career. Fuqua began his career directing music videos for popular artists such as Toni Braxton, Stevie Wonder, and Prince. He directed Michelle Pfeiffer in the video Gangsta's Paradise by Coolio, which was used to promote Jerry Bruckheimer's successful film Dangerous Minds. The movie became a big hit and Jerry Bruckheimer was kind enough to give me a lot of credit for it because they used my music video. The irony was people thought I was the new French film director. No one had any idea I was this guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I used to walk in the room and people would literally ask me to get coffee. And I would say, no, I'm the director, and I loved watching their faces. That was fun. 7. From 1998 onwards, Fuqua began working primarily as a feature film director. In a tribute article for Time magazine, Fuqua expressed his early respect for Kurosawa as a filmmaker and how Kurosawa influenced his own perspective on filmmaking, stating, "Screenwriter Hashimoto's working with Akira Kurosawa and Hideo Oguni was so beautiful and poetic and powerful and heartbreaking. It was all about justice, it was all about sacrifice, and it made me want to be one of those guys." 6. His first feature films were the John Woo-produced action film The Replacement Killers, 1998, starring Chow Yun-fat, and the action comedy Bait, 2000, starring Jamie Foxx. He then directed the crime thriller Training Day, 2001, for which star Denzel Washington won an Academy Award for Best Actor. His next films were the action war drama Tears of the Sun, 2003, the Arthurian legend film King Arthur, 2004, the conspiracy action thriller Shooter, 2007, the crime film Brooklyn's Finest, 2009, and the action thrillers Olympus Has Fallen, 2013, and The Equalizer, 2014. the latter of which again pairs Fuqua with Denzel Washington. In 2011, he directed CIA procedural Fox pilot Exit Strategy starring Ethan Hawke, 8/9. Fuqua at the 2016 Toronto International Film Festival. He co-created the comic book miniseries After Dark with Wesley Snipes, which was written by Peter Milligan and illustrated by Jeff Nentrop. 10. He was slated to direct Tupac Shakur's official biopic, 11, but the project was postponed to allow Fuqua to direct rapper Eminem's second feature film, Southpaw, 2015. 12. Eminem later left Southpaw to focus on his music, 13, and was replaced with Jake Gyllenhaal, 14. Fuqua's 2016 film, The Magnificent Seven, was a remake of the classic 1960 western of the same name, which itself was an American remake of Kurosawa's 1954 film, Seven Samurai. Denzel Washington plays the lead role of Sam Chisholm, 15. In early 2018, Fuqua worked as one of the executive producers on the Fox medical drama series The Resident. In the summer of 2018, his thriller sequel The Equalizer 2, 2018, was released with Denzel Washington returning in the main role. In June 2021, Fuqua's sci-fi film Infinite, starring Mark Wahlberg and Chiwetel Ejiofor, was released. In 2021, Fuqua and actor Will Smith announced that their upcoming film, Emancipation, would not be filmed in Georgia because of the recent passage of Georgia's new voting law. Smith and Fuqua released a joint statement. We cannot in good conscience provide economic support to a government that enacts regressive voting laws that are designed to restrict voter access. 16. On December 3, 2021, he signed a first-look deal with Netflix and renamed his production company from Fuqua Films to Hill District Media. 17. He later signed an overall television deal with Paramount Television Studios and MTV Entertainment Studios. 18. In 2023, it was announced that Fuqua would be producing a television miniseries based on the life of Chaka. 19. In January 2023, Fuqua announced his next film project would be Michael, a biographical film about Michael Jackson, starring Jackson's nephew Jaffer Jackson and being produced by Graham King. The action film is a film genre that predominantly features chase sequences, fights, shootouts, explosions, and stunt work. The specifics of what constitutes an action film has been in scholarly debate since the 1980s. While some scholars such as David Borwell suggested they were films that favor spectacle to storytelling, others such as Jeff King stated they allow the scenes of spectacle to be attuned to storytelling. Action films are often hybrid with other genres, mixing into various forms such as comedies, science fiction films, and horror films. While the term action film or action-adventure film has been used as early as the 1910s, the contemporary definition usually refers to a film that came with the arrival of New Hollywood and the rise of anti-heroes appearing in American films of the late 1960s and 1970s, drawing from war films, crime films, and westerns. These genres were followed by what is referred to as the classical period in the 1980s. This was followed by the post-classical era, where American action films were influenced by Hong Kong action cinema and the growing using of computer-generated imagery in film. Following the September 11th attacks, a return to the early forms of the genre appeared in the wake of Kill Bill and the Expendables films. Scott Higgins wrote in 2008 in Cinema Journal that action films are both one of the most popular and popularly derided of contemporary cinema genres, stating that, in mainstream discourse, the genre is regularly lambasted for favoring spectacle over finely tuned narrative. 2. Borwell echoed this in his book, The Way Hollywood Tells It, writing that the reception to the genre as being the emblem of what Hollywood does worst. 3. In the Journal of Film and Video, Leonard Soberson stated that the action film genre has been a subject of scholarly debate since the 1980s. For Soberson wrote that repeated traits of the genre include chase sequences, fights, shootouts, explosions, and stunt work, while other scholars asserted there were more underlying traits that define the genre. For David Bordwell, in The Way Hollywood Tells It, wrote that audiences are told that spectacle overrides narrative in action cinema, while Winston Dixon echoed that these films were typified by excessive spectacle as a desperate attempt to mask the lack of content. 5. Jeff King argued that the spectacle can also be a vehicle for narrative, opposed to interfering with it. 6. Soberson stated that Harvey O'Brien had perhaps the most convincing understanding of the genre, stating that the action film was best understood as a fusion of form and content. It represents the idea and ethic of action through a form in which action, agitation, and movement are paramount. 4. O'Brien wrote further in his book Action Movies, The Cinema of Striking Back, to suggest action films being unique and not just a series of action sequences, stating that that was the difference between Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, and Die Hard, 1988, that while both were mainstream Hollywood blockbusters with the hero asserting masculinity and overcoming obstacles to a personal and social solution, John McClane in Die Hard repeatedly firing his automatic pistol while swinging from a high-rise was not congruent with the image of Indiana Jones in Raiders swinging his whip to fend off villains in the backstreets of Cairo. 7. British author and academic Yvonne Tasker expanded on this topic, stating that action films have no clear and constant iconography or settings. In her book The Hollywood Action and Adventure Film, 2015, she found that the most broadly consistent themes tend to be a character's quest from freedom from oppression, such as a hero overcoming enemies or obstacles, and physical conflicts or challenge, usually battling other humans or alien opponents. 8. By late 2010 studies of genre analysis, the term genre itself is often replaced or supplemented with the words mode and narrative form, with all three terms often being used interchangeably. 9. Johan Hoagland and Agnieszka Soltysik-Mana said that the difference between these concepts are elusive, but stated that genre could be defined as belonging to specific historical and cultural moments, while mode and form can refer to a larger pattern that operates across a wider historical and cultural field. 9. In their book Action Cinema Since 2024, Tasker, Lisa Peirce, and Chris Homeland stated that thinking of action as a mode is more helpful than thinking of it as a genre. 10. The three authors suggested that action frames a certain manner of filmmaking and viewing exceed genre without eclipsing it, stating that websites such as IMDb and Wikipedia rarely label films by a single genre, and that streaming services such as Amazon Prime and Netflix similarly dilutes what is marketed and received as action. In transnational cinema, there are two major trends in action films: Hollywood action films and their style being imitated around the globe, and the other being Chinese-language martial arts films. The roots of action films extend into the beginning of film, but it was only in the mid-20th century when action films developed into their own recognizable genre, instead of being a collection of other types of films such as westerns, swashbucklers, or adventure films. Films have been described, action films, or action-adventure film, as early as the 1910s. Only by the 1980s was the term action as its own unique genre used routinely in terms of promotion and reviewing practices. The first Chinese-language martial arts films can be traced to Shanghai cinema of the late 1920s. These films were popular during the period, which comprised almost 60% of the total Chinese films. Man-Fung Yip stated that these films were rather tame by contemporary standards. 13, he wrote that they lacked the kind of dazzling action choreography as expected today and had crude and rudimentary special effects. These films came under increasing attack by both government officials and cultural elites for their allegedly superstitious and anarchistic tendencies, leading them to be banned in 1932. It was not until the base of Chinese commercial filmmaking was relocated from Shanghai to Hong Kong in the late 1940s that martial arts cinema was revived. These films contained much of the characteristics of the previous era. During this period, over 100 films were based on the adventures of real-life Cantonese folk hero Wang Feiheng, who first appeared in film in 1949. These films primarily circuited within Hong Kong and Cantonese-speaking areas with Chinese diaspora. 14. Yip continued that these Hong Kong films were still lagging behind in aesthetic and technical standards that films from the United States, Europe, and Japan had during this period. 15. Yip described Japanese cinema as the most advanced in Asia at the time. This was showcased by the international breakthrough of Akira Kurosawa's films like Rashomon, 1950. 15. The film genre known as the chambro was at its height in Japan. The style was a subgenre to the jidegeki, or period drama with an emphasis on sword fighting and action. 16. It had a similar level of popularity to that of the Western in the United States. The most internationally known films of this era were the films Kurosawa with Seven Samurai, 1954, The Hidden Fortress, 1958, and Yojimbo, 1961. 17. By at least the 1950s, Japanese films were looked upon as a model to be emulated by Hong Kong film production, and Hong Kong film companies began actively enlisting professionals from Japan, such as cinematographer Tadashi Nishimoto, to contribute to color and widescreen cinematography. 15. New literary sources also developed in martial arts. Films of this period, with the Shinpai Wuxia Xiaoshua, or New School martial arts fiction, coming into prominence with the success of Lian Yushin's Longhu Do Jinhua, 1954, and Jin Yang Shujian and Chulu, 1956, which showed influence of the Shanghai martial arts films but also circulated from Hong Kong to Taiwan and Chinese communities overseas. This led to a growing demand in both local and regional markets in the early 1960s and saw a surge in production of Hong Kong martial arts films that went beyond the stories about Wang Feiheng, which were declining in popularity. 18. These new martial arts films feature magical swordplay and higher production values and more sophisticated special effects than the previous films, with Shaw Brothers a campaign of New School Shinpai martial arts swordplay films such as Su Sin-hong's Temple of the Red Lotus, 1965, and King Hu's Come Drink With Me, 1966. 19. The popularity of Bruce Lee attracted a global audience for kung fu films. However, his career was cut short following his untimely death in 1973, which led to a decline in popularity for the art form. 20. In the 1970s, the Hong Kong martial arts films began to grow under the format of Yangen, staunch masculinity, mostly through the films of Chang Che, which were popular. This transition led to the kung fu film subgenre at beginning of the decade and moved beyond the swordplay films with contemporary settings of late Qing or early Republican periods and had more hand-to-hand combat over supernatural swordplay and special effects. 21. A new studio, Golden Harvest, quickly became one of independent filmmakers to grant creative freedom and pay, and attracted new directors and actors, including Bruce Lee. 22. The popularity of kung fu films and Bruce Lee led to attract a global audience of these films in the United States and Europe, but was cut short on Lee's death in 1973, leading the phase's popularity to decline. 20. Following a period of stagnation, Chan Che and Lau Carliang revitalized the genre with Shaolin Kung Fu films and Chor Yuan's series of docker swordplay films based on the novels of Gu Long. 20. Kung fu comedies appeared featuring Jackie Chan as martial arts films flourished into the 1980s. Other films again modernized the form with gangster films of John Woo, A Better Tomorrow, 1986, The Killer, 1989, and the Wong Fei-hung saga returning in Tsui Hark's Once Upon a Time in China featuring Jet Li, which again revitalized the swordplay-style films. 20. By the turn of the century, Hollywood action films would look towards Hong Kong cinema and bringing some of their major actors and directors over to apply their style to their films, such as Chan, Woo, Lee, Michelle Yeoh, and Yuan Wu. Ping. 23. The release of Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, 2000, led to a global release status of Chinese-language martial arts films, most notably Zhang Yimou's Hero, 2002, and House of Flying Daggers, 2004, Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle, 2004, and Shin Kaiga's The Promise, 2005. 24. Most Hong Kong action films in the first quarter of the 21st century, such as those in Cold War, 2012, Cold War II, 2016, and the White Storm film series have their violence toned down, especially compared to the earlier work of directors like Wu and Johnny Tu. 25, Anton Chen, in his study on the Hong Kong action film, wrote that the influence of China and the amount of Chinese co-productions made with Hong Kong created a shift in these films, particularly following the release of Infernal Affairs, 2002. 26. Hollywood action films. Harvey O'Brien wrote in 2012 that the contemporary action film emerged through other genres, primarily westerns, crime and war films, and can be separated into four forms: the formative, the classical, the post-classical and neoclassical phases. 27. Yvonne Tasker reiterated this in her book on action and adventure films, saying that action films became a distinct genre during the New Hollywood period of the 1970s. 8. Steve McQueen in 1968, the year Bullitt was released. The formative films would be from the 1960s to the early 1980s, where the anti-hero appears in cinema, featuring characters who act and transcend the law and social conventions. This appears initially in films like Bullitt, 1968, where a tough police officer protects society by upholding the law against systematic corruption. This extended into films which O'Brien described as knee-jerk responses to perceived threats, with rogue cop and vigilante films such as Dirty Harry, 1971, and Death Wish, 1974, where the restoration of order is only possible by force and antisocial characters prepared to act when society does not. 27. The vigilantism reappears in other films that were exploitative of Southern society, such as Billy Jack, 1971, and White Lightning, 1973, and Good Old Boy comedies like Smokey and the Bandit, 1977. This era also emphasizes the car chase scenes as moments of spectacle in films like Bullitt and The French Connection, 1971. O'Brien described these films as emphasizing the fusion of man and machine, with the drivers and vehicles acting as one, concluding with what he described as the ultimate in apocalyptic modernity and social erasure in Mad Max 2, 1981. 28. O'Brien described the classical form of action cinema to be the 1980s. The decade continued the trends of formative period with heroes as Avengers, Lethal Weapon, 1987, Rogue Police Officers, Die Hard, 1988, and Mercenary Warriors, Commando, 1985. Following the continuity of the car and man hybrid of the previous decade, the 1980s featured weaponized men who were either also carrying weapons such as sudden impact, 1983, Trained to be Weapons, American Ninja, 1985, or imbued with technology, RoboCop, 1987. 28. O'Brien noted that the formative trends at this point had become identifiably generic. As film industries began to reproduce these films during the decade, producers like Joel Silver and production companies like the Canon Group Incorporated began to formulate production of these films with both high and low budgets. 29. The action films of this era have roots in classical storytelling, specifically rooted from martial arts films and westerns, and are built around a three-act structure centered on survival, resistance, and revenge, with narratives where the physical body of the hero is tested, traumatized, and ultimately triumphant. 30. The third shift in action cinema, the post-classical, was defined by the predominance of Eastern cinema and its aesthetics, primarily the wirework of Hong Kong action cinema from the classical era, through the convention of the increasingly computer-generated effects. This saw the decline of overt masculinity in the action film, which corresponded with the end of the Cold War in 1991, while the rise of self-referential and parodies of this era grew in films like Last Action Hero, 1993. O'Brien described this era as being soft, where the hard bodies of the classical era were replaced with computer-generated imagery such as that of Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991. 31. This was displayed and corresponded with millennial angst and apocalypticism showcased in films like Independence Day, 1996, and Armageddon, 1998. 32. Action films of mass destruction began requiring more overtly superheroic characters, with further comic book adaptations being made with increased non-realistic settings, with films like The Matrix, 1999. 33. The fourth phase arrived following the September 11 attacks in 2001, which suggested an end to fantastical elements that defined the action hero and genre. 33. Following the release of Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill, Volume 1, 2003, and Kill Bill, Volume 2, 2004. Revisited the tropes of 1970s action films, leading a renaissance of vengeance narratives in films like The Brave One, 2007, and Taken, 2008. O'Brien found that Tarantino's films were postmodern takes on the themes that rescinded irony to restore cinephile reactualization of the genre's conventions. 33. The genre went into full circle, resurrecting films from the classical period with Live Free or Die Hard, 2007, and Rambo, 2008, finding the characters navigating a contemporary world while also acknowledging their age, culminating into The Expendables, 2010, film. 33. The most commercially successful action films and franchise of the 21st century have been comic book adaptations, which commenced with the X-Men and is seen in other series such as Spider-Man and Iron Man series. 34. 35. Tasker wrote that despite the central characters in superhero cinema being extraordinary, occasionally even godlike, they often followed the traces of the central character becoming powerful, of which is fundamental to action films, often dealt with origin stories in superhero films. 36. Action films often interface with other genres. Tasker wrote that films are often labeled action thrillers, action fantasy, and action adventure films with different nuances. 37. Tasker went further to state that both the action and adventure are often used in hybrid or as interchangeable terms. 38. Along with Haumond and Peirce, Tasker wrote that the action film's expansiveness complicates easy categorization, and though the genre is often spoken of as singular genre, it is rarely discussed as singular style. 39. Screenwriter and academic Jules Selbo expanded on this, describing a film as crime/action, or an action/crime, or other hybrids was only a semantic exercise, as both genres are important in the construction phase of the narrative. 40. Mark Bold, in a companion to film Moi, 2013, said that categorization of multiple generic genre labels was common in film reviews that are rarely concerned with succinct descriptions that evoke elements of the film's form or content and make no claims beyond on how these elements combine. Film studies began to engage generic hybridity in the 1970s. James Monaco wrote in 1979 in American Film Now, "The people, the power, the money, the movie star, the lines that separate one genre from another have continued to disintegrate." 43. Tasker said that most post-classical action films are hybrids, drawing from genres as varied as war films, science fiction, horror, crime, martial arts, and comedy films. 37. Martial arts film. Main article, martial arts film. In Chinese language films, both wuxia and kung fu are genre-specific terms, while martial arts is a generic term to refer to several types of films containing martial arts. 44. Wuxia. Main article, wuxia. The wuxia film is the oldest genre in Chinese cinema. 45. Stephen Teo wrote in his book on wuxia that there is no satisfactory English translation of the term, with it often being identified as the swordplay film in critical studies. It is derived from the Chinese words wu denoting militarist or martial qualities and xia denoting chivalry, gallantry, and qualities of knighthood. 44. The term wuxia entered into popular culture in the serialization of Jinigo Zhuan, 1922, translate Legend of the Strange Swordsman. 46. In wuxia, the emphasis is on chivalry and righteousness and allows for phantasmagoric actions over the kung fu film's more ground-based combat. 47. Kung fu film. Main article, Kung fu film. The kung fu film emerged in the 1970s from the swordplay films. 48. Its name is derived from the Cantonese term gong fu, which has two meanings: the physical effort required to completing a task and the abilities and skills acquired over time. 49. Films from the period reflected on the cultural and social climate from the period, as seen in invoking Japanese or Western imperialist forces as foils. 48. The kung fu film came out of the wuxia films. 44. In comparison to the wuxia film, the focus on the kung fu film is on the martial arts over chivalry. 50. The martial arts film was in decline by the mid-1970s in Hong Kong in relation to the stock market crash, which went from over 150 films in 1972 to just over 80 in 1975, which led to a downfall in martial arts films produced. When the economy began to rebound, a new trend of martial arts films, the Shaolin Kung Fu films, emerged and sparked a revival of the genre. 51. Unlike the wuxia, the Kung Fu film primarily focuses on fighting on the ground. 47. While heroes in Kung Fu films often display chivalry, they generally hail from different fighting schools, namely Wudang and Shaolin. 44. 47. American-styled productions. American martial arts films feature what author M. Ray Lott described as a more realistic style of violence over the Hong Kong wuxia films with more realism and are often low-budget productions. 52. Martial arts began routinely appearing in fight scenes in American films in the 1960s with films such as The Born Losers, 1967, which was predominantly a drama, interspersed with martial arts scenes. 53. 54. American martial arts films predominantly came into production following the release of Enter the Dragon, 1973, with the only higher-budgeted American film to follow in its wake being The Yakuza, 1974. 55, 56. Laud noted the two films would lead to the two subsequent styles of martial arts films in the United States, with films like Enter the Dragon about people who reveled in combat, often in a tournament setting, and the Yakuza, which had several genres attached to it, but featured several martial arts sequences. 57. By the end of the 1970s, the style was an established genre in American cinema, often featuring tough heroic characters who would fight and not think about their actions until after a fight sequence. 58. In the 1980s, American martial arts films reflected the national move towards conservatism, reflected in films of Chuck Norris and other actors such as Csokas. 59. The genre would shift from theatrical releases towards the end of the decade with the rise of home video, the lower box office of American martial arts productions, and a significant portion of direct-to-video action films that first were made in the late 1980s in the United States were martial arts films. 55, 59, 60. Towards the end of the 1990s, production of low-budget martial arts films declined as no new stars in the genre developed and older actors such as Cynthia Rothrock and Steven Seagal started showing up in less and less films. 61, 62. Even internationally popular films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, 2000, had negligible effects in American productions in either the direct-to-video field or in similarly low-budget theatrical releases such as Bulletproof Monk, 2003. 63. While the American-style films were predominantly made in the United States, productions were also made in Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, and South Africa, and were predominantly shot in the English language. 64. Heroic bloodshed. Main article, Heroic bloodshed. Heroic bloodshed is genre of that originates with English-language Hong Kong action and crime film fan communities in the late 1980s and early 1990s. 65. Author Bay Logan stated that the term was coined by Rick Baker in the British fanzine Eastern Heroes. 65. 66. The term is used broadly. 65. Baker described the style as Hong Kong action films which feature gangsters and gunplay and martial arts that were more violent than kung fu films, and academic Christoph van den Troost described it a term used to distinguish Hong Kong gun-heavy action films from period martial arts films from the late 1980s and early 1990s. 65, 66. In the Chinese language, the term used for these films is Jinghunken, literally meaning hero films. 65. Academic like Wan Pang asserts that these gangster films appeared at a time when Hong Kong citizens felt particularly powerless with the handover of Hong Kong from the United Kingdom to China set for 1997. 67. The key directors of the genre were John Woo and Ringo Lam, and producer Suri Hark, with the starting point of the genre being traced to Woo's A Better Tomorrow, 1986, Make a Record, breaking 34.7 million Hong Kong dollars at the Hong Kong box office. 68. The style of these films would influence American productions, such as Michael Bay's Bad Boys 2, 2003, and the Wachowskis' The Matrix, 1999. 68. Korean media recognized the more fatalistic and pessimistic tone of these films, leading to Korean journalists to label the style as Hong Kong noir. 69. The influence of these films was evident in early Korean films such as Kwon-taek's General's Son, 1990, and later films such Song Hae Sung's A Better Tomorrow, 2010, Cold Eyes, 2013, and New World, 2013. 70. Post-colonial Hong Kong cinema has struggled to maintain its international identity as a provider of these types action films because the talents involved had abandoned the Hong Kong film industry after the handover in 1997. 71. Regional action cinema. Anglophone action film scholarship has tended to emphasize bigger-budget American action films, with academics tending to find films that fall out of Hollywood productions as not quite fitting definitions of the genre. By 2024, many national and regional industries were known for action films. These include international films such as Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, South Korean, Japanese, Thai, Brazilian, Chinese, South African, French, and Italian action titles. 72. Australia. At the turn of the millennium, Australian genre films have gained increasing acceptance in the Australian feature film industry, while the action genre represented a small percentage of its output in the 21st century. 73, 74. Scholars of Australian genre film generally used the term action-adventure, which allows them to apply it to various forms of narrative such as tongue-in-cheek heroic posturing stories like Crocodile Dundee, 1986, road movies or bush/outback films. 74. In the book Australian Genre Film, Amanda Howell suggested that this label was used to help distance Australian cinema from Hollywood films, as it would be suggesting commerce over culture and that it would be quite unacceptable to make Australian movies using conventions established in the USA. 74. Howell stated this to be the case with action films of the 1970s and 1980s, with Brian Trencher Smith's Turkey Shoot, 1982, being the most notorious. Smith had previously released films like Death Cheaters, 1976, and Stunt Rock, 1979, when financial incentives were available for overtly commercial projects. 74. She commented that action films did tell identifiably Australian stories, such as the Sandy Hobbit's biker film Stone, 1974, and Miller's post-apocalyptic film Mad Max, 1979, derived from Australia's social and cultural realities, as well as how George Miller's later Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, derived from Australia's long-standing cinematic fascination with the road and cars, and a history of cultural anxiety towards a bleak and forbidding outback landscape opposed to the optimism of American action films. 74. France is a major European country for film production and has made co-production commitments with 44 countries around the world. 76. Around beginning of the 21st century, France began producing a series of films explicitly intended for international markets, with action films representing a significant portion. These films include Taxi 2, 2000, Kiss of the Dragon, 2001, District 13, 2004, and Unleashed, 2005. 77. When asked about the Americanization of these French films, Christophe Gans, director of Brotherhood of the Wolf, 2001, stated that Hollywood ownership of certain elements must be challenged in order to show that these elements have also long been present in European culture. 78. The most significant producers of French action films with international ambitions is Luc Besson's France-based EuropaCorp, who released films like Taxi, 1998, and From Paris with Love, 2010. 75. EuropaCorp produced Transporter franchise starred British actor Jason Statham and made him an action film star, which led him to feature in the Expendables series by the end of the 2010s. 78. The action film genre has been a staple of Bollywood cinema. 79. In the 1970s, the Bollywood action film consolidated with two films starring Amitabh Bachchan, Prakash Mehra's Zanjeer, 1973, and Yash Chopra's Diwar, 1975. The box office success of these films made Bachchan a star and spawned the Angry Young Man film in Bollywood cinema. 80. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the action genre film declined considerably, with new films predominantly featuring former bodybuilders failing to reach the popularity Bachchan had. These films predominantly earned their revenue through longer runs at B-grade theaters. 80. A cycle of action films came from these films in the 1980s and 1990s called the Avenging Woman film, where female protagonists seek justice for a rape victim, where the protagonist seeks revenge through violence. 81. In 2009, the action genre was repopularized with the box office success of Wanted, 2009, starring Salman Khan. Khan reinvented his screen persona with that of his image in the Bollywood press, who reported on him in the headlines of Bollywood magazines for his public brawls and affairs with leading actresses. 80. In Dabangg, 2010, Khan continued with this public persona, which was repeated in several of his later films such as Ready, 2011, Bodyguard, 2011, Ek the Tiger, 2012, and Dabangg 2, 2012. 82. Japan was a difficult market for Hong Kong action cinema to break into. Prompted by the success of Enter the Dragon and the popularity of Bruce Lee, Toei made their own Bruce Lee-style martial arts films, with The Street Fighter and its two sequels starring Sonny Chiba, as well as a spin-off with a female lead similar to Hong Kong's Angela Mao called Sister Street Fighter. The success of Enter the Dragon briefly allowed an influx of Hong Kong films to Japan, but the trend did not last, with 28 Hong Kong films, mostly kung fu films, being released in 1974, and the number decreasing to 5 in 1975, 4 in 1977, and only 2 in 1978. 87. Ryuhei Kitamura, director of Versus, 2000, said in 2004 that he grew frustrated with the Japanese film industry as producers felt they couldn't make action films in competition with Hong Kong or American productions. 88. Versus grew to become popular outside of Japan, and Kitamura said he was aiming for the foreign audience, as he was disappointed with the current state of Japanese films. 89. Kitamura's characters have been described as a careful combination of the maverick independence of 1980s Hollywood action heroes and the calmness and acceptance of Japanese samurai, a consistent criticism of Japanese people today. 90. Kitamura followed up Versus with two manga-inspired big-budget action films, Hazumi and Sky High. Both released in 2003, the former was one of the highest-grossing movies of the year in Japan. Following Love Death, Kitamura's next directing work was in the United States. 91. Korea. The action cinema of South Korea mostly existed on the margins of the film industry in South Korea. 92. The genre was initially called the Wakuk, living theater, was a term that indicated plays and films driven by action scenes, while this term has not been used regularly since the late 1970s, with action movie becoming the more familiar term. 93. The Korean action films came from Japanese cinema, James Bond series, and Hong Kong action cinema. 94. As North Korea borders China, dit bloc. Access to the continent from a South Korean perspective, the Cold War allowed South Koreans to substitute deferred travel beyond the border through films with locations shot in Hong Kong. 95. While melodrama and comedy were staples in South Korean cinema, most action films were sporadic and tied to the use of locations such as Hong Kong. 96. These films often feature one-legged or otherwise handicapped action characters similar to those of Japanese films, Satoichi, and Hong Kong films. The One-Armed Swordsman. 95. 96. These included M. Kwon Taek's Return Left-Handed Man, 1968, Ikunanan Box 1 EYD Park, 1970, and Lee Do-young's Returned One-Legged Man, 1974. 97. In the 1990s, the country's national cinema was in decline, leading to Hong Kong gangster films filled in this void, leading to large commercial success at the national box office. 98. Early Korean heirs to Hong Kong action films include Rolls of the Dame, 1994, Beat, 1997, and Green Fish, 1997, involving men who gain confidence and achieve personal growth as they embark on journeys to protect national state and meet devastating ends. 99, South Korean cinema only received international attention in both art film and blockbuster formats towards the end of the 1990s. Films such as Chunhae, 2000, and Memento Mori, 2000, and action films Shiri, 1999, and Nowhere to Hide, 1999, received commercial releases in North America, Asia, and Europe. The success of the latter two films was unprecedented, and was followed by other South Korean action films in the early 2000s reaching the top of the local box office. 92. These South Korean films mimic some traits of the Hong Kong action cinema, such melodramatic male bonding and marginalized women characters, while the Korean films also have greater elements of tragedy and romance emphasized. 99. United Kingdom. See also, Cinema of the United Kingdom. The Britishness of UK-produced action and adventure films vary and are often obscured or gone unnoticed. Others feature predominantly British casts and settings that suggest Britishness, or are adaptations from well-known examples of British popular fiction featuring characters like James Bond or Sherlock Holmes as seen in Guy Ritchie's two adaptations, Sherlock Holmes, 2009, and Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, 2011. 100. Tasker described these British action films as differed from the Hollywood form, also not removed from it in terms of style. 100. Tasker wrote that, despite their longevity and commercial and cultural prominence, the British James Bond films rarely serve as exemplars of the action films but more as outliers and strong influences on the genre. 100. While Larry Gross described the series as the progenitor of the high-tech action film, and they exemplified the characteristics of the modern Hollywood action thriller, featuring usually violent action over plot and characterization, low narrative complexity, and a series of set pieces and chase scenes as well as Bond's one-liners after dispatching a foe. 101. Historian James Chapman said that the Britishness of the Bond films has been one of their main selling points, a factor which differentiates them from all the other action movies which have followed in their wake. 102. Reception. Most martial arts films made before the mid-1960s were Cantonese-language productions. In comparison, Mandarin-language films were an integral part of Hong Kong cinema due to the influx of Shanghai film talent in the post-war period. These films were targeted at the more educated and more refined middle-class audiences who saw themselves as above the contemporary martial arts films. Scott Higgins wrote in 2008 in Cinema Journal that Hollywood action films are both one of the most popular and popularly derided of contemporary cinema genres, stating that, in mainstream discourse, the genre is regularly lambasted for favoring spectacle over finely tuned narrative. 2. Bordwell echoed this in his book, The Way Hollywood Tells It, writing that the reception to the genre as being the emblem of what Hollywood does worst. Justify her physical aggression through narratives involving maternal drive, mental instability, or trauma. 114. Peirce found that female leads in films like Elektra, 2005, Kill Bill, Underworld, Charlie's Angels, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 2005, did showcase women having expensive cars, clothing, travel, homes, and often high-paying jobs, but that this was only shown as being applicable to white middle-class women. 115. Peirce found that these women were empowered at the price of women of other ethnicities. This is seen in Aeon Flux, 2005, where Sathandra dies protecting Aeon and Rain's death to make way for Alice in Resident Evil, 2002. Denzel Hayes Washington Jr., born December 28, 1954, 1, is an American actor, producer, and director. 2. Known for his dramatic roles on stage and screen, he has received numerous accolades including 2 Academy Awards, 2 Golden Globe Awards, and 1 Tony Award, as well as nominations for a Grammy Award and 2 Emmy Awards. In 2020, the New York Times named Washington the greatest actor of the 21st century. 3. 4. He has also been honored with the Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2016, DFI Life Achievement Award in 2019, the Honorary Palme d'Or in 2025, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2025. 8. 6. 7. 8. Films in which he has appeared have grossed over $5.1 billion worldwide. 9. After training at the American Conservatory Theater, Washington began his career in theater, acting in performances off-Broadway. He first came to prominence in the NBC medical drama series St. Elsewhere, 1982 to 1988, and in the war film A Soldier's Story, 1984. Washington won Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor for playing an American Civil War soldier in the war drama Glory, 1989, and for Best Actor for playing a corrupt police officer in the crime thriller Training Day, 2001. 10. He was Oscar-nominated for his roles in Cry Freedom, 1987, Malcolm X, 1992, The Hurricane, 1999, Flight, 2012, Fences, 2016, Roman J. Israel, ESU, 2017, and The Tragedy of Macbeth, 2021. Washington has starred in other notable films, including The Pelican Brief, Philadelphia, both 1993, Crimson Tide, Devil in a Blue Dress, both 1995, He Got Game, 1998, Remember the Titans, 2000, Man on Fire, 2004, Deja Vu, Inside Man, both 2006, American Gangster, 2007, Unstoppable, The Book of Eli, both 2010, The Equalizer Trilogy, 2014 to 2023, Gladiator 2, 2024, and Highest to Lowest, 2025. Washington has also directed the films Antoine Fisher, 2002, The Great Debaters, 2007, Fences, 2016, and A Journal for Jordan, 2021. On stage, he has acted in the public theater productions of Coriolanus, 1979, and The Tragedy of Richard III, 1990. He made his Broadway debut in the Ron Milner play Checkmates, 1988. He won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play for his role as a disillusioned working-class father in the Broadway revival of August Wilson's play Fences, 2010. He has also acted in the Broadway revivals of William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, 2005, and Othello, 2025, Lorraine Hansberry's play A Raisin in the Sun, 2014, and Eugene O'Neill's play The Iceman Cometh, 2018. Early life and education. Denzel Hayes Washington Jr. was born in Mount Vernon, New York, on December 28, 1954. His mother, Lennis Lynn Lowe, was a beauty parlor owner and operator born in Georgia and partly raised in Higham, New York, 11, 12, 13, 14. His father, Denzel Hayes Washington Sr., a native of Buckingham County, Virginia, was an ordained Pentecostal minister who was also an employee of the New York City Water Department and worked at a local S. Klein department store. Washington attended Pennington Grimes Elementary School in Mount Vernon until 1968. When he was 14, his parents divorced and his mother sent him to the private preparatory school Oakland Military Academy in New Windsor, New York. Washington later said, "That decision changed my life, because I wouldn't have survived in the direction I was going. The guys I was hanging out with at the time, my running buddies, have now done maybe 40 years combined in the penitentiary. They were nice guys, but the streets got them. 15. After Oakland, he attended Mainland High School in Daytona Beach, Florida, from 1970 to 1971. 11. He was interested in attending Texas Tech University. I grew up in the boys' club in Mount Vernon, and we were the Red Raiders. So when I was in high school, I wanted to go to Texas Tech in Lubbock just because they were called the Red Raiders and their uniforms looked like ours. 16. Instead, he earned a BA in Drama and Journalism from Fordham University in 1977. 17. At Fordham, he played collegiate basketball as a guard. 18. Under Coach P.J. Carlesimo. 19. After a period of indecision on which major to study and taking a semester off, Washington worked as creative arts director of the overnight summer camp at Camp Sloan YMCA in Lakeville, Connecticut. He participated in a staff talent show for the campers and a colleague suggested he try acting. 20. Returning to Fordham that fall with a renewed purpose, Washington enrolled at the Linton Center campus to study acting, where he was cast in the title roles in Eugene O'Neill's The Emperor Jones and Shakespeare's Othello. He then attended graduate school at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, California, where he stayed for 1 year before returning to New York to begin a professional acting career. 21. Career. See also, Denzel Washington on screen and stage. 1976 to 1989, early roles and rise to prominence. Washington spent the summer of 1976 in St. Mary's City, Maryland, in summer stock theater performing Wings of the Morning. 22. 23, the Maryland State Play, which was written for him by incorporating an African-American character/narrator based loosely on the historical figure from early colonial Maryland, the Thias de Souza. 22. Washington at the 62nd Academy Awards, 1990, at which he won Best Supporting Actor for the film Glory. Shortly after graduating from Fordham, Washington made his screen acting debut in the 1977 made-for-television film Wilma, which was a docudrama about sprinter Wilma Rudolph, and made his first Hollywood appearance in the 1981 film Carbon Copy. He shared a 1982 Distinguished Ensemble Performance Obie Award for playing Private First Class Melvin Peterson in the off-Broadway Negro Ensemble Company production A Soldier's Play, which premiered November 20, 1981. 24. A major career break came when he starred as Dr. Philip Chandler in NBC's television hospital drama St. Elsewhere, which ran from 1982 to 1988. He was one of only a few African-American actors to appear on the series for its entire 6-year run. He also appeared in several television, motion picture, and stage roles, such as the films A Soldier's Story, 1984, Hard Lessons, 1986, and Power, 1986. In 1987, he starred as South African anti-apartheid political activist Stephen Biko in Richard Attenborough's Cry Freedom, for which he received a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. In 1989, Washington won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of a defiant, self-possessed ex-slave soldier in the film Glory. That same year, he appeared in the film The Mighty Quinn, and in For Queen and Country, where he played the conflicted and disillusioned Reuben James, a British soldier who, despite a distinguished military career, returns to a civilian life where racism and inner-city life lead to vigilantism and violence. 1990 to 1999, Hollywood stardom and acclaim. Washington at the White House in 1999. In the summer of 1990, Washington had appeared in the title role of the Public Theater's production of William Shakespeare's Richard III. Mal Gussell of the New York Times praised Washington as an actor of range and intensity, his expert at projecting a feeling of controlled rage. Duck 25. Also that year Washington starred as Bleak Gilliam in the Spike Lee film Mo' Better Blues. Charles Murray of Empire praised Washington's performance as a top portrayal of the driven musician, and, like all Lee's film, Mo' Better Blues is a real ensemble piece, and the standard of the performances is uniformly excellent. But Washington and Lee deserve extra plaudits. 26. In 1991, he starred as Demetrius Williams in the Mira Nair-directed romantic drama Mississippi Masala opposite Sarita Chowdhury. Set primarily in rural Mississippi, the film explores interracial romance between African Americans and Indian Americans. Critic Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times praised the chemistry of the two leads, writing, "Washington is an actor of immense and natural charm, and he makes a good match with Sarita Chowdhury." 27. Washington was reunited with Lee to play one of his most critically acclaimed roles, the title character of the historical epic Malcolm X, 1992. The New York Times gave the film its critics' pick with Vincent Canby declaring, "In Denzel Washington it also has a fine actor who does for Malcolm X what Ben Kingsley did for Gandhi." Mr. Washington not only looks the part, but he also has the psychological heft, the intelligence, and the reserve to give the film the dramatic excitement. 28. His performance as the Black nationalist leader earned him another nomination for the Academy Award for Best Actor. Also that year, he established the production company Mundy Lane Entertainment. 29. The next year, he played the lawyer defending a gay man with AIDS played by Tom Hanks in the Jonathan Demme film Philadelphia, 1993. Sight and Sound wrote, "Casting Washington in the lead guaranteed the film the black audience that otherwise might not have had much interest in the problems of a rich white homosexual with AIDS. But AIDS is rampant in inner cities, where it attacks not just gay men, but for drug users and women." 30. During the early and mid-1990s, Washington starred in several successful thrillers, including The Pelican Brief with Julia Roberts in 1993, and Crimson Tide with Gene Hackman in 1995, as well as the Shakespearean comedy Much Ado About Nothing directed by Kenneth Branagh. In 1996, he played a U.S. Army officer who investigates a female chopper commander's worthiness for the Medal of Honor and Courage Under Fire, opposite Meg Ryan. Variety wrote, "Olaf, the predicaments are palpably and convincingly registered through Washington's probing, reserved, and sensitively drawn performance in a role that, in another era, might have been played by the likes of a Montgomery Clift or William Holden." 31. In 1996, he starred alongside Whitney Houston and Courtney B. Vance in the romantic comedy The Preacher's Wife directed by Penny Marshall. The film is a remake of the 1947 film The Bishop's Wife starring Cary Grant, Loretta Young, and David Niven. 32. In 1998, Washington starred in Spike Lee's film He Got Game. Washington played a father serving a 6-year prison term when the prison warden offers him a temporary parole to convince his top-ranked high school basketball player son, Ray Allen, to sign with the governor's alma mater, Big State. The film was Washington's third collaboration with Lee. 33. The same year he starred in Gregory Hoblet's supernatural horror film Fallen, 1998, with John Goodman, James Gandolfini, and Donald Sutherland. 34. In 1999, Washington acted alongside Angelina Jolie in the crime thriller The Bone Collector. That same year, Washington starred in The Hurricane, a film about boxer Reuben "Hurricane" Carter, whose conviction for triple murder was overturned after he spent almost 20 years in prison. Although less successful at the box office than The Bone Collector, Hurricane had a better reception from critics. 35. He received a Silver Bear Award at the Berlin International Film Festival for his role as Carter. Roger Ebert, film critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, wrote of Washington's performance, This is one of Denzel Washington's great performances, on a par with his work in Malcolm X. 36. 2000 to 2009, established actor and action roles. Washington in 2000. At the 57th Golden Globe Awards in 2000, Washington won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture Drama for his work in The Hurricane. He was the first black actor to win the award since Sidney Poitier in 1963. 37. 38. Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle declared, Washington gives a penetrating portrait of life at its most extreme. He takes the viewer into the mind of a man experiencing confinement and physical deprivation. More profoundly, he shows what it's like to deal every day with the torments of wild rage and impotence, despair and hope. 39. In 2000, he portrayed Herman Boone, the high school football coach in the Disney sports drama film Remember the Titans, which grossed over $100 million in the U.S. 40. Andrew Ohio of Ceylon Road, Washington is of course the linchpin of Remember the Titans. He's a commanding actor in a commanding role, and as memorable as he was in The Hurricane. 41. Washington starred in the Antoine Fuqua-directed crime thriller Training Day, 2001, acting opposite Ethan Hawke. He portrayed Detective Alonzo Harris, a corrupt Los Angeles cop. Roger Ebert wrote of his performance, for Denzel Washington, it is a rare villainous role. He doesn't look, sound or move like his usual likable characters. He's like a monster from a horror film, unkillable and implacable. 42. Washington won an Academy Award for Best Actor, becoming the second African-American actor to win the category after Poitier, who was presented with an honorary Academy Award the same night. 43. He also received nominations for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture Drama and the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Male Actor in a Leading Role. In 2002, he starred in the Nick Cassavetes-directed healthcare-themed drama John Q. 2002, portraying John Quincy Archibald. Washington acted opposite James Woods, Robert Duvall, and Ray Liotta. The film was a financial success but received mixed reviews, with critics praising Washington's performances. BBC film critic Neil Smith wrote, "What credibility there is comes from Washington's intense, humane performance and the supporting players' sterling attempts to rise above the stereotypical roles with which they have been saddled." 44. That same year Washington directed his first film, a well-reviewed drama called Antoine Fisher, 2002, in which he also co-starred as a Navy psychiatrist. Stephen Holden of the New York Times praised his direction, writing, "Mr. Washington shows a confident grasp of cinematic narrative in a hearty mi-d'empateo style. But the most remarkable aspect of his behind-the-camera debut is his brilliantly sure-footed handling of actors." He also praised his acting, adding, "He is so sensitively reactive that his performance seems more lived than acted." 45. Washington after a performance of Julius Caesar in May 2005. Between 2003 and 2006, Washington appeared in a series of thrillers that performed generally well at the box office, including Carl Franklin's Out of Time opposite Eva Mendes and Tony Scott's Man on Fire alongside Dakota Fanning. In 2004 he acted opposite Meryl Streep in the remake of the 1962 film of the same name, The Manchurian Candidate. 46. In 2006, he starred in Inside Man, a Spike Lee-directed bank heist thriller co-starring Jodie Foster and Clive Owen. Todd McCarthy of Variety wrote, "Its flashy cast, clever script, and vibrant showcasing of New York City are strong pluses for Spike Lee's most mainstream studio venture." 47. Later that year he starred in the time travel movie Deja Vu, released in November. In 2005, he was back on stage playing Brutus in the Broadway revival of Julius Caesar. Theater critic Ben Brantley of the New York Times wrote, "Washington does not embarrass himself, as leading citizens of Hollywood have been known to do on Broadway. But even brilliantined in the glow of his inescapable fame, he can't help getting lost amid the wandering, mismatched crowd and the heavy topical artillery that have been assembled here." Despite mixed reviews, the production's limited run was a consistent sellout. 49. In 2007, he co-starred with Russell Crowe for the second time. The first was 1995's Virtuosity, in Ridley Scott's crime drama American Gangster, for which she received a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor, Motion Picture Drama nomination. He also directed and starred in the drama The Great Debaters with Forest Whitaker. He next appeared in Tony Scott's 2009 film The Taking of Pelham 123, a remake of the 1974 thriller of the same name, where he played New York City subway security chief Walter Gaba opposite John Travolta's villain. 50. 2010 to 2019, return to theater and the Equalizer trilogy. Washington with Anne Hathaway at the Nobel Peace Prize concert in 2010. Washington returned to Broadway playing Troy Maxson, opposite Viola Davis, in the revival of August Wilson's Fences, 2010. Ben Brantley of the New York Times wrote, "Mr. Washington has the fluid naturalness we associate with good screen actors. Face and stance alone provide fascinating and damning glimpses into Troy's attitudes toward his son from an earlier relationships." 51. Washington won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play on June 13, 2010. 52. That same year, Washington starred in The Book of Eli, 2010, a post-apocalyptic action drama set in the near future. Also in 2010, he starred as a veteran railroad engineer in the action film Unstoppable, about an unmanned, half-mile-long runaway freight train carrying dangerous cargo. The film was his fifth and final collaboration with director Tony Scott, following Crimson Tide, 1995, Man on Fire, 2004, Deja Vu, 2006, and The Taking of Pelham 123, 2009. In 2012, Washington starred in Flight, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance as an alcoholic airline pilot facing investigation for his part in a plane crash. He co-starred with Ryan Reynolds in Safe House, where he prepared for his role by subjecting himself to a torture session that included waterboarding. 53. In 2013, Washington starred in Two Guns, alongside Mark Wahlberg. From April to June 2014, Washington played the leading role in the Broadway production of Lorraine Hansberry's classic drama A Raisin in the Sun, directed by Kenny Leon. 54. The show received positive reviews and won the 2014 Tony Award for Best Revival of a Play. 55. That same year he starred in The Equalizer, 2014. An action thriller film directed by Antoine Fuqua and written by Richard Wenk, based on the television series of same name starring Edward Woodward. 56. He reprised his role in his first sequel, The Equalizer 2, 2018, and the third and final sequel, The Equalizer 3, 2023. In 2016, Washington starred in The Magnificent Seven, a remake of the 1960 Western film of the same name, alongside Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, Lee Byung-hun, Manuel Garcia-Rolfo, Martin Sensmeyer, Haley Bennett, and Peter Sarsgaard. Principal photography began on May 18, 2015, in North Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The film premiered on September 8 at the 2016 Toronto International Film Festival, and was released in the United States in conventional and IMAX theaters on September 23, 2016. 57. In The Magnificent Seven, Washington plays Sam Chisholm, the bounty hunter, a duly sworn warrant officer from Wichita, Kansas. 58. His character was renamed from Chris Adams, played by Yul Brynner in the original film, to Sam Chisholm, 59. It is Washington's first Western film. 60. Washington did not watch Westerns growing up, as it was the end of the Western era in the movies. Moreover, he and his siblings were barred from going to the cinema by his father, a minister in a church. They grew up watching biblical films instead, like King of Kings and the Ten Commandments, although he has said that he watched portions of the shows Rawhide and Bonanza. 60. 61. He did not view the original film in preparation, but has watched Seven Samurai. 60. Fuqua flew to New York City to negotiate with Washington, who accepted the offer. 62. 63. Washington at the premiere of The Equalizer in 2014. In 2016, Washington directed the film Fences, co-starring Viola Davis and Stephen McKinley Henderson and based on August Wilson's play of the same name, with a script by Wilson. Set in 1950s Pittsburgh, Washington plays a former Negro League baseball player working as a garbage collector who struggles to provide for his family and come to terms with the events of his life. The film was released on December 16, 2016, by Paramount Pictures. Owen Gleiberman of Variety wrote, Washington, as both actor and director, gets the conversation humming with a speed and alacrity that keeps the audience jazzed. Washington tears through it with a joyful ferocity, like a man possessed. 64. For his performance, Washington was nominated in the Best Actor category for a Golden Globe Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award, and an Academy Award. The film was nominated for 3 other Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, and won Davis her first Oscar, in the Best Supporting Actress category. The following year, Washington starred in the legal drama film Roman J. Israel, ESQ, 2017. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian wrote, he, as a star player, styling out his character's complicated and tricky mix of attributes, however contrived, this character is always fully and comfortably inhabited, and Washington brings off the funny moments. 65. While the film received mixed reviews, his performance was praised by critics and led to nominations for a Golden Globe Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award and an Academy Award, Washington's 9th Oscar nomination overall, and his 6th for Best Actor. In 2020, he produced the Netflix film adaptation of the August Wilson play Ma Rainey's Black Bottom starring Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis. The film was directed by George C. Wolfe and received positive reviews. The following year he portrayed Deputy Sheriff Joe Deacon in the crime thriller The Little Things, acting opposite Rami Malek and Jared Leto. The film was released during the COVID-19 pandemic and was released in theaters and on HBO Max. Also in 2021, Washington portrayed the titular character in the 2021 film adaptation of the William Shakespeare tragedy Macbeth. 68. He received universal acclaim for his performance and was nominated for several awards, including an Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. That same year, Washington directed the drama A Journal for Jordan, based on the memoir A Journal for Jordan, A Story of Love and Honor by Dana Canedy. It received a wide theatrical release on December 25, 2021, 69, and received mixed reviews from critics. 70. In 2024, Washington starred in Ridley Scott's epic historical drama Gladiator II alongside Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, and Connie Nielsen. The film is a sequel to Scott's Gladiator, 2000. 71. Washington's performance was described as scene-stealing and the standout aspect of the film, earning a Golden Globe Award nomination. 72. In the same year, Washington served as a producer of The Piano Lesson, The Netflix film adaptation of the August Wilson play of the same name, directed by his son Malcolm Washington and starring his other son John David Washington. In 2025, Washington returned to Broadway portraying the title role in a revival of William Shakespeare's play Othello, starring opposite Jake Gyllenhaal as Iago. Kenny Leon will helm over the production, having previously directed Washington in the Broadway revivals of Fences and A Raisin in the Sun, 73. The production and Washington's performance earned mixed reviews from critics, 74. Adrian Horton from The Guardian described the production as underwhelming and wrote of his performance, "He has moments of sublime melody, the kind of rhapsodic deliveries that feel worth whatever price of admission, but the overall tone of his performance is one of perfunctory hypercompetence." 75. David Rooney of The Hollywood Reporter noted Washington's Hollywood magnetism and swaggering authority,